Good afternoon, everyone, and can I welcome you to the Ulster Society of Chartered Accountants webinar on Invest NI schemes, what you need to know. For those of you who don't know me, I am John Mallers and I'm convener of the Accountants and Business Subcommittee of the Society. This is the third in our series this year, having previously looked at the topics of the future of work and the impacts of Brexit and the NI protocol on freight. Today, we're going to be looking at the support available from Invest NI, and we'll also bring that theory to life by hearing Kairos' story. For those of you who have been dialing into this series of webinars in the past, you will have heard my usual spiel on what we on the CAB committee aim to do. The good news is that you will be saved from that this afternoon, as instead we are going to try an online poll to garner some feedback and help us shape future events. So thank you all for your time there just in providing that feedback. As I say, it's just something we wanted to help us shape future events as we move forward. Now, moving on to this afternoon's lunchtime slot, many of you will have noticed that Invest NI has launched a number of new support schemes and initiatives aimed at addressing the current challenges businesses are facing, and also have a broad range of other more business as usual schemes in place as well. We thought, therefore, that it would be useful to have a summary of the various schemes, and clearly many of you did as well, as we have over 300 registered for the session this afternoon. I am delighted that we have Jeremy Fitch, who, as a member of the Institute and Society, needs little introduction with us today. A long-standing executive director with Invest NI, Jeremy sits on the executive leadership team at Invest, and we are delighted that he has taken the time out this afternoon to take us through this. When Jeremy is finished, I will introduce our next speaker, Gareth Quinn from Kairos, and we will then have the opportunity for a Q&A session at the end. Can I therefore ask you during the presentations to submit any questions that you have via the Q&A function on Zoom, and I will pick them up at the end. So, not wanting to take up any more time now, I will hand over to Jeremy for a summary of the Invest NI supports and initiatives. Over to you, Jeremy, and thank you.
Thank you, John, and good afternoon, everybody. It's really great to join you. It's really encouraging to see how many people signed up. I'm not sure if it's just raining outside or people need their CPD, but anyway, it's great. It's great to hear the interest in the programs. I'm just going to share the screen here, so if you give me 1 second, I will try and make sure I get this right. And hopefully that is coming up now. So this is really quite a difficult presentation to give because there are so many schemes. And I know that it's difficult to give because I sort of feel I've failed so many times in the past in giving it, because if you go into too much detail, it really is quite boring. But if you make it too high level, then it just becomes meaningless. So what I'm going to try and do is give a strategic overview and really highlight some of the categories of schemes that we have. And then if you want more detail, I'll also provide signposts, so where you can go to get further detail on those schemes. And probably the best bit of this afternoon will be then Gareth talking about the Kairos story and how some of our schemes then hopefully have helped them. So the outline for me is really just to provide a little bit of an overview of where we are from an economy point of view, the impact of COVID, some of the schemes that we have introduced that John's talked about, some of the schemes that we have ongoing with regard to EU exit, the context of government support and why we support certain areas, and then going into what are the broad areas that we do support and why we support them, and then that's at the high level, the high strategic level. And then there'll be signposts then to where to get more detail if you need that, and then Gareth will come on after that. So the last 12 months have just been horrendous, I think, for many people. There's a lot of people who have lost loved ones, and that is just that's the worst part of all of this, that people have died. A lot of people have been ill, and with long COVID continue to be ill, and many businesses have also been devastated by this. Add on top of that, we have had Brexit, and there's so much other uncertainty in the economy that it makes it a very difficult environment to deal with and to deal in. What this slide shows is just how difficult it has been. Overall, UK exports are down over 15%. And when you look at Northern Ireland in that context, we're still within that, we're about level with the UK, maybe slightly below the impact in Northern Ireland to the rest of the UK. Within Northern Ireland, looking at the furlough scheme at the moment, in Northern Ireland, there's about just over 100,000 people on furlough. That's 14% of the eligible who can be in furlough. And again, that's pretty consistent with what's happening in the rest of the UK. The maps of Northern Ireland highlight what the impact is for Invest NI client base. So you can see it's quite spread right across Northern Ireland. There's different impacts across the region, and there are also different impacts according to which sector. So some sectors have been much more harshly hit than others, and particularly hospitality, tourism, non-food retail, aerospace are examples of sectors that have been hit more in a harder way. I'm going to refer a lot this afternoon to this particular website. It's nibusinessinfo.co.uk. And what this does is it's a website that's provided by Invest Northern Ireland. So there's a team in my group that coordinate this and publish everything that's on it. If you've never heard of this, and if there's one thing I would ask you to remember from my whole presentation, is just go on and have a look at this site. It is a fantastic resource. I don't have time to go through all of the programs, but on it there are a list of the programs that are there. There's further details that are there. The one that I've got highlighted in the slide is just a PDF of the existing programs, not just the ones that Invest NI offer, but what are offered right across the UK as well. So remember nibusinessinfo.co.uk and go and have a look at it. Put it on your menu bar for your browser. Really, really good resource. In terms of CBILS and the bounce back loans, quite interesting figures. So there's a huge amount of money that has been pumped into Northern Ireland on this basis. So on CBILS, about £500 million and just over £1 billion on the bounce back loan. And again, the percentage to the UK total is probably not far off a pro rata with regard to our population. As part of the response, so this is the executive's response to COVID, Invest NI was asked to manage the distribution of the emergency fund. So that's the Northern Ireland Micro Business Hardship Fund. We also have the COVID restriction business support schemes, A and B. We have the newly self-employed support scheme and the limited company director support scheme. If I could say for anyone who's involved in applications for these, get your CRBSS applications in quickly. They need to be submitted really over the next few days if you're waiting to submit some of those. But the purpose of this slide is really just to highlight the volume of work that has been going on in managing the distribution of these funds. So we were asked as an organisation to deliver these. You can see that just over £93 million has been paid out up until the 22nd of March. And that is the number of applicants paid is just over 12,000. So anyone involved in banking and that type of thing, and you know the challenges of know your customer. This was all additional work that we took on. About 20% of our staff were directed to managing these. And interestingly enough, all of the other programs didn't take any, there was no decline in demand for the other programs across the year. So it's put a huge amount of pressure on the organisation to deliver it. But the team that have done a fantastic job in managing those programs. In addition to those, what we call emergency programs, the organisation has also been involved in introducing what we've called COVID recovery programs. 8 new programs, some have closed already. So the Business and Financial Planning Grant, which some of you may have been involved in, is closed. The Micro Business e-commerce grant is closed at the moment. The ones that are underlined in that slide, so the Equity Investment Fund, the Supply Chain Resilience Development Fund, and the Process and Organisational Improvement Grant, there's still scope for those. Process and Organisational Improvement Grant is going through a pilot at the moment, and there'll be more to be announced in the future. The ones with the asterisks, so the Digital Selling Capability Grant, Productive Investment Capital Grant, are ones that will depend on whether we get more budget, whether we can run those again. But again, you can see the volume of activity, 1,200 applications and £5.2 million of support that's been offered. If you're not sure of how to find out when these get launched, the best way to do it is to sign up to follow Invest NI on social media and NI Business Info as well. So that's very briefly covering off the COVID emergency schemes and the recovery programs. But again, more detail on either investni.com or nibusinessinfo.co.uk. With regard to Brexit, there's a range of support that continues to be available for Brexit. On the website, you have the homepage, which has an EU exit readiness checklist, which I'll cover off in a second. It just then highlights the most recent guidance that's been issued, and then there's a guidance by business topic available as well. So as I said, 10 steps to take on the online support. I won't bother reading those out laboriously, so they're there, but there's a number of things that we're encouraging people to do if you have not already done them. In addition to that, Invest NI has been offering webinars. These have been recorded, and if you want to go and have a look at what is available, then they're still available on the investni.com website. So things like VAT implications on goods and services, impact on data compliance, employing EEA workers and the new immigration system, and impact on supply chain. So a whole range of webinars that are still available from our website. In addition, we have advice clinics, one-to-one advice clinics. Businesses can sign up for 3 one-to-one appointments. These are free, they last 20 minutes. They're on topics like transport and logistics, customs and tariffs, indirect taxation, supply chain and strategic sourcing, and some other topics are covered as well. But again, more detail on the website. There is one of those happening as we speak, and then that slide highlights the others that are coming up over the next few weeks and months, so March through to the end of May. So you need to book online to get those one-to-one advice clinic appointments. The next part I want to do is really focus a little bit more on the type of support that Invest NI offers generally. Now, what I want to do is provide a strategic context to this. And I think it's important you understand what the role is of economic development within the executive and what Invest NI's role is within that. What is particularly important, I think, for everyone on the call, and a really important role that the Ulster Society plays, is when we elect our politicians, they bring out their programme for government. So this is basically what they say they are going to deliver to the people of Northern Ireland. We get a chance to feed into that, and bodies like the Ulster Society play a really important role because they are a representative body, and certainly in the role I have in Invest NI, if the Ulster Society put in a submission, I'm paying a lot of attention to it because it's such a strong indicator of what business is saying. It's a very powerful representation body. So it's good to feed into those documents, and these determine then what the executive's priorities are, and what the executive's priorities are then determine where the budget goes and how that gets spent. So you have the programme for government that cascades down into what the Department for the Economy has as part of its industrial strategy, and then that cascades down into what we have as our business strategy within Invest NI. So we're just coming to the end of what was the draft strategy for the economy, and our business strategy as well. Our business strategy takes us up to the 31st of March 2021. But it's interesting, if you read the industrial strategy, there are a number of key themes that come out. So I'm looking at the bottom of that blue box at the bottom of the slide there, and we have accelerating innovation and research. So we have, on the basis of that, government has just decided that's a priority. We will have innovation and R&D programs. Skills is important, so we have skills and strategy programs. Driving inclusive, sustainable growth is a priority, so we will have growth and finance programs. Succeeding in global markets, so we will have international programs. And then building the best economic infrastructure is another priority, so we will have capital investment programs. So you see how what is defined within the programme for government and the industrial strategy as key themes then determine what Invest NI offers. And these are the broad areas, international programmes, capital investment programmes, and such that we will offer. And they've got to align to what the executive's strategy is, because that determines how the budget gets spent. Now, one of the things that I find interesting is asking people what they believe Invest NI's role is. I sat next to a guy at a breakfast one time, and he asked me, what do you do? And I said I worked for Invest NI. And he said, they're not much use, are they? So apart from asking him what interpersonal skills course he had just been on, I sort of said, well, why do you say that? And he said, well, they never give me any money. And I said, okay, what sector are you in? He said, I'm in the IT sector. And I said, well, what exports do you have? And he said, we don't export. And I think that is a critical differentiator for what Invest NI does. And I'm keen to try and get that point across about what we support and what we cannot support, what we can support and what we cannot support. So a lot of people think we're just about jobs. Some people will think we're just about international investment. It's much broader than that. If you were to sum up what Invest NI is about, is we are charged with the executive and Department for Economy to help grow the economy. Government agencies don't grow economies, businesses grow economies. So we will work with businesses to help them grow. And if you were to ask me to sum up what Invest NI does in a few words, I would say it's all about value-added external sales. So how can we increase productivity in Northern Ireland? How can we generate wealth? And that's the value-added element. And then where are the economic growth opportunities? And what sets us apart as an organisation is the external sales dimension. So Northern Ireland has 1.8 million people. So as a market, that is tiny. And if we're going to look for work for people to do, where is the demand going to come from? Then we need to look where there are markets of scale and there are markets that are growing. So those are markets outside of Northern Ireland. So what we do as an organisation is that we will focus on external sales. And on that basis, we will have a very strong focus on markets outside of Northern Ireland. If we're going to win business in markets outside of Northern Ireland, then we need to be competitive. And if we're going to be competitive, then we need to innovate. And if we're going to innovate, we need to have skills to be able to do that. With regard to value add is more than just jobs. It's also about the quality of jobs. So value added is basically wages and salaries plus profits. And the equation then is number of jobs times the quality of the jobs plus the profits. So it's not just about the number of jobs, we're also looking at the quality of jobs as well. And that ties into also encouraging support for skills and enhancing people's abilities. And again, you look at these themes that I just mentioned before coming out again. So we'll have international programs, we'll have innovation and R&D programs, skills and strategy programs, growth and finance programs, and capital investment programs. And that's broadly how we will, on a thematic basis, focus our efforts. So if we want to grow the economy, how do we do it? The first way is really to start off by looking at the existing companies that are here. So we take the existing companies, whether they're internationally owned or locally owned, and encourage them to become more competitive so that they can win sales in external markets. We'll also encourage businesses, or encourage people to set up businesses in Northern Ireland, and that's encouraging a spirit of entrepreneurship and new starts with an export focus in Northern Ireland. And then we'll attract in new inward investment as well, who are companies that are focusing on markets outside of Northern Ireland. So these are our three channels of growth. It reflects the way that we're structured at the moment. So the entrepreneurships and new starts is our, in a sense, covers off a lot of what our regional offices do. New inward investment is delivered from our international offices. And then we have a number of sector teams in our existing company, clients, and they're organized on a sectoral basis. Cross-cutting each of those, we have these same themes coming out again. So we have programs that look at trade and exports. We have programs that look at innovation. We have programs that look at research and development, skills and training, leadership and strategy, process development, technology uptake, property solutions, and the provision of funding. So the structure of Invest NI is like a matrix structure We have 3 client-facing groups: the regional office group, regional business group, the business and sector development group, and then the international business group. And then the group that I head up is the business solutions group, which is that basically block on the left, investment in, and we provide the programs and the support and the schemes to each of those client-facing groups. So the structure that we have looks like this. The regional business group, as I said, business sector development and international business. And that's the structure. Now, key in this slide is to highlight that one of the questions that we get asked is Invest NI exclusive to supporting a certain number of businesses? And the answer to that is a categoric no, that we are providing some support to businesses right across Northern Ireland. Now, the challenge that we face is that we have limited resource, so we've got to invest that resource where we get the greatest return. So if we're providing support to businesses right across Northern Ireland, then it tends to be on a one-to-many type basis. So we will use things like NI Business Info, we will use seminars, we'll use online methods to deliver a one-to-many type service. And then as we see companies develop and we see the potential that they have to win business and grow in export markets, then they will move to a more one-to-one client relationship management style of client management. And then they moved into the account managed teams in that way. So question we often get asked is, what do you need to do to qualify for account management? The bar is, we think, relatively low. So it's actual turnover of greater than 250,000, but there needs to be a dimension of a proportion of that that's looking at external sales. And then also where there is growth potential. So we want to assist businesses that are going to grow. These slides will be available, by the way, afterwards, and I think that it has been recorded too, as John said at the start. Here's some examples of the programs that we have that are open to everybody. So innovation vouchers, as we talked about, NI Business Info, much of our access to finance programs, suite of programs are open to a wide range of companies. Our Propel and Accelerator programs for new startups are open to anyone to apply pretty much as well. One that I'd just like to draw attention to that I think is a fantastic resource is the Employer's Handbook. Again, it's available through nibusinessinfo.co.uk, but if you're a small business and you're just looking for some guidance on employment techniques, on recruiting, on best practice, it is a really, really superb resource, and I would encourage you to tap into that. So as I said, a lot of this is available on nibusinessinfo.co.uk, and that's one of our key methods for serving that wider business space. The full suite of programs is a way, so the key piece on this slide are those 2 website addresses, investni.com/support for business. And then again, through NI Business Info, there is what we call a business support finder. So you can type in what you're looking for, and hopefully that will help find the program that will help you. And it's not limited to just Invest NI programs. But then you can see again the themes, other types of themes that we are offering support under. So starting a business, operating more efficiently, improving skills, developing products and services, finding new markets, finding funding, developing strategy, and then how the claims system works as well. So that's all available on that investni.com/support for business. So very conscious of time here, and I've got a few slides still to rattle through. Our business strategy, as I said, is just coming to an end, 31st of March 2021. We're very pleased with the outturn on that. We have hit our targets that were set for us in that strategy. Our board and the minister has charged us with setting a new strategy, and this is a recovery plan to come out of COVID. These are the 8 drivers that we have identified. But again, you will see very similar themes coming through. So growing external sales, the importance of innovation, commercialization and entrepreneurship, skills coming out, and then as key drivers that we will be focusing on going forward. But new ones that are coming in, greater emphasis on the green economy, and then levelling up is all about how can we make sure that economic development is spread right across Northern Ireland as well. Big impact on this will be what happens with the city deals as well, and also managing EU exit, and does that provide opportunities for Northern Ireland going forward. So very briefly, and literally in 3 or 4 minutes, I'm going to try and take you through some of the headlines of what these schemes offer. So if we're looking at export and trade, what can Invest NI do? We can provide support on market research. We can provide help to enter a market. We can provide help on visiting that market. And then once you're in that market, then there will be further in-market support. And we have 24 offices around the world that we hope can help businesses identify sales opportunities in those markets. So that's where we also tailor our trade support to where the business is at. So some businesses have full, they have distribution networks and they have sales teams in market. So there's less that we would be doing necessary to help them. And it might just be more lobbying or providing introductions that we can do. But then if it's a smaller company bringing it into the market for the first time, it might be hand-holding to get them into that market in the first place. As an illustration of how this is working, these are the external sales, export sales for Invest NI client base since 2013 up to 2019. So it will probably come back a little bit with the impact of COVID last year, and we saw that 15% reduction. The figures at the start were HMRC figures. This is for our client base, but really quite impressive figures. And again, this is impressive. This is the Northern Ireland business base growing exports over the last 7 years or so. So exports increased by 36.4%, 2.3 billion, and external sales, which is including GB, increased by 45.5%, another 5.3 billion. On innovation, research and development, again, depending on where the business is at, we are trying to make sure that we have schemes and programs for everybody. So if you're a small business, if you're starting up and you see a market opportunity and you're just looking for some advice on how to create a product, then we have innovation vouchers. We have a team of engineers in our technical advisory unit to provide innovation advice. And then we have a range of schemes. So the TDI is the technical development incentive. Then we have grant for R&D. And then we have support for collaborative research and development, and then competence centers, which is trying to assist probably long-term technology-led innovation. And the emphasis then is, okay, how do we commercialize some of those opportunities? So you can see when we're looking at us from a strategic point of view, the programs that we have, we're trying to make sure that we have programs that cover the full spectrum of needs of businesses in Northern Ireland. And again, looking at what the impact of this has been, research, as mentioned, is measured in BIRD, which is business expenditure in research and development, GERD, which is government expenditure in research and development, and HERD, which is higher education research and development. So the key one for us is the lighter blue line, business expenditure in R&D. And again, you can see over the last 5 or 6 years how that has increased from 410 million to 630 million. So again, Northern Ireland is improving, but when we compare ourselves against other regions, there's still a lot to be done. I talked at the front end about we need to innovate, we need to be competitive, we need to invest in our skills, and we have a range of programs then on skills, on improving leadership. I talked about the employer's handbook and employment advice, but then also the 5 below that: operational excellence, management information systems support, energy and resource efficiency support, and the design programs are all there to help businesses become more innovative and competitive in those particular areas. Intervention principles. So what are the key issues that you need to address whenever you're looking for Invest NI funding? So the key starting point is your investment, is your project consistent with the programme for government, with the industrial strategy, and with Invest NI's business strategy? So we've been given that money on behalf of the taxpayer to invest in what the executive have asked us to have, what they have deemed to be their priorities. So is it consistent with that strategy? But what we talk about as our intervention principles are, is there a strategic fit? Is the project viable? So is there a leadership team in place? Is there a management team that can manage this project? Is there a product that works? Is there a market for it? And is there funding? Is there enough funding to make this project happen? Then what are the requirements for our Invest NI for Invest NI funding. I'm sure a lot of you have heard us talk about additionality. So basically what that means is what additional benefit does taxpayers' money make? What additional benefit does that buy? So if it's going to happen anyway, we can't support it. And then finally, if we're investing £100 or £1 million into a project, can we demonstrate that that's giving a positive return to the economy? So is the project, does it have a strategic fit? Is it viable? Is our money, is Invest NI's money actually required? And if it is required, does it give it a positive return? That's what we are assessing whenever we are determining whether or not to put money into some of these projects and schemes. Finally, last few slides, we have an access to finance program, which is delivered by our partners. So businesses like White Rock, Clarendon, Techstart Ventures, Ulster Community Finance deliver these programs, Crescent Capital too. And you can see the equity funds there and the loan funds that we have. And again, more detail on that in the interest of time on our website. And finally, we have property solutions. So we have a range of parks and industrial estates across Northern Ireland. There's still about 500 acres of land available. There are some parts of Northern Ireland where that is getting tight. That's an issue that we have to address. But again, there's more detail on that on the website, some case studies of what we've done as well. But also we will assist businesses in finding locations and office and factory accommodation as well. So we do have a database online to help with that process. Finally, just in the lead in to Gareth, we have support online for new business startups. As a result of the review of public administration a few years ago, the support for businesses that are just focusing locally and just on local markets transferred to the councils. But we try to provide some broader support on this one-to-many aspect idea as well. And again, there's as part of nibusinessinfo.co.uk, you can go online and you can get advice and guidance on thinking about starting. So that's just a specific example to point people in direction if they are looking to get startup help, and all of that resources in one particular area. So hopefully that's a really quick rattle through. I've gone slightly over time, so forgive me, John and Gareth, on that. The two pointers are, one, nibusinessinfo.co.uk, but also if you just want to talk to someone and look for a bit of advice or a signpost, you can phone the business support team on 0800 181 4422 or email them at inquiry@investni.com, and they should be able to help point people in the right direction as well. So I know it's high level. Hopefully it gives you a flavour, and hopefully you know where to go for further detail as well. So John, apologies that I've gone slightly over on that.
You're okay. Thanks very much, Jeremy. That was really useful. Nice sort of backdrop in terms of your first few slides, setting the context and then the drivers of the programme for government and economic strategy feeding down into what's available, what you can support with your schemes, and then the areas that you look at when you're assessing. So I think that was really useful and really interesting. I always like in these webinars to have a real life story and a case study and bring it to life. So look, I would now like to introduce Gareth Quinn. Some of you may know Gareth as founder of Digital DNA, which I'm sure many of us are familiar with. But Gareth joins us today to share his experience of founding and growing Kairos, a scheduling and communications platform for professional sports teams. Gareth will chat through how he has engaged with Invest NI, his experience of that, and the outcomes. He has promised a warts and all story. And again, I would encourage you to submit any questions you have via the Q&A function, and I will pick them up at the end. Thank you. Over to you, Gareth.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me along, folks. First of all, it's nice to be able to share a bit of the story so far. I'll start with an apology as well for all those that registered thinking that Andrew Trimble is going to be giving this presentation. So sorry about that. I've got 4 slides you'll be glad to hear, and the first one is the intro slide and the last one is the closing slide, so 2 slides in total. And really what I'm going to try and do is just take a bit of a journey as to what we've been up to at Kairos, really, and then to try and intertwine into that the relationship with Invest Northern Ireland. Kairos, for those that don't know, which is probably most people on the call, Kairos is a software and it's a scheduling and communications platform specifically for elite sports teams. So we'll tell you a little bit of the story as to how we've come about. But Kairos is a platform which is for your Premier Leagues, Championship, League One, League Two teams, and that type of ilk. You know, we have aspirations of getting into MLS, etc. as well. So that's the type of customer that we're looking to sell to. So very much an international audience. Just going to take you, as I say, on a bit of a journey here, and the best place to start is the start. So the first sort of milestone, if you like, it was a charity event. Andrew and myself on a board of a charity here, and we were up in Ormo Park, and that was the first time that he raised the issue that he had. So Andrew's sort of problem, if you like, was that he was getting a bit older and a bit more mature as an athlete, and he was starting to realize more and more, especially under the guidance of people like Joe Schmidt, and the importance of being very methodical, very planned in terms of being able to execute and perform come game day. And the problems that he had was that there was so much noise and clutter, for want of a better word, whenever it came to, you know, Ireland camps, for example, you know, communications around sessions, events, lunches, dinners, you know, sessions being moved, information being shared. His issue was that was all quite disparate all over the place, and he wanted to try and find a way of being able to make things a lot simpler. So we had that first discussion way back in late 2016. Throwing this in as well, because around that time, whenever we were chatting about Kairos and what it could be and what it might be, for any rugby fans will know about the Ireland versus All Blacks game, and for Andrew that was a sort of an epitome of what he was what he was going after, because for him the reason that Ireland were able to run out that great victory in Soldier Field was because of how methodical and well planned out, not just the actual performance on the day, but in the lead up to that, and every player or the job to do collectively, what they had to do, even things like the travel arrangements, all of that just came together. And that was an example for him of how something more streamlined would be able to help create those sorts of performances more often. Whenever we come into 2017, bear in mind Andrew's still playing rugby, both for Ireland and Ulster at the time. I have digital DNA, as John mentioned as well. So I think the way we describe this in Northern Ireland was we were tiddling away at this idea and this concept of what could be. And the big overriding thing for both of us was that there was bound to be something else out there that's doing this already. Whenever you think of the budgets and the innovation and the ambitions, if you like, of a lot of these clubs. And the next 4 milestones here really are just a bit of an indication of that. Just what we would coin now in retrospect as being product discovery. And we chatted with numerous different individuals and clubs and teams, and not just locally as well, but there are just 4 sort of headliners that people will be able to relate to. Joe Schmidt became a big ambassador for what we were doing and became very, very insightful and helped us a lot in trying to help us understand what was actually required. And then we were able to validate that with numerous other people. You'll see this is Techstart. So in October to December in late 2017, we approached a company, Techstart NI, who we didn't know an awful lot about. We knew that they had a relationship with Invest Northern Ireland. We were pointed towards them. Anywhere that you guys see a star here on my deck, that's where we had support directly or indirectly, if you like, from Invest Northern Ireland. And Techstart were running a program at that time, POC, proof of concept. So the idea was at a very early stage, Techstart were trying to help companies take an idea into something tangible, whether that be what they call a MVP, minimal viable product, the most basic thing you can actually build to show a bit of value, or whatever that may be to try and validate it. So we kickstarted a very successful relationship with Techstart way back then, and you'll hear throughout the story about how that relationship has continued. But that gave us, I think it was £10,000 at the time, for us to be able to go and engage with a local company, Dawson Andrews, to be able to get them to help us, you know, build out an MVP, build out the prototype, you know, the technology, but in reality, just help us get our heads around what exactly it was we were trying to do. Even from a design perspective, what would this thing look like? You know, does it include events? Does it include communications? Does it include all of that? Documents, etc. You know, the types of personas that we were looking to use the product, you know, from a 65-year-old coach down to like a 15-year-old player sort of breaking through. So they helped us a lot with that. And that was the first real engagement with what you could say was Invest NI through a program that they were jointly delivering. In the 2018 then, work started on that MVP. So we kickstarted that with Dawson Andrews, a local firm in Belfast. We used that time as well with Dawson Andrews to give ourselves a bit of a presence. So we knew that this was a new concept to a lot of sports clubs, especially on this side of the Atlantic. So we needed to find some way of being able to articulate our message and give us a bit of credibility in the market. There was a lot of people peddling their wares, if you like, to clubs with lots of money. So we decided to create a very basic website. Again, Dawson Andrews did that whilst working on the MVP. And that was useful because we were able to visualize quite a bit of our early branding and messaging into what was quite a basic website at the time. And after being able to deliver on that, we then went back to Techstart and we spoke to them again to the next chapter of what they offered, which is what they call Proof of Concept Plus. So that was an opportunity for us then to get a little bit more funding, I think with £25,000. And we had to demonstrate, obviously, that what we had done with the MVP was actually helping to validate, the business idea, the market opportunity. So the Techstart Proof of Concept Plus was an extra amount of money to take that further and to try and get us actively into a club where we start to focus on what they call product market fit. I'm conscious as well there'll be a lot of people on the call, who aren't involved in startups, and so some of this will be more relevant than others, but hopefully there's some of it will be useful. So after that, then Andrew retired. So that was important for us because it was around this time that we were really starting to take this seriously. I'm not saying Andrew retired because of Kairos. Obviously, it was because he had lost his touch, as we like to slag him. I joke with that. Many people say that the guy retired too early, but for us, that was a new impetus on the business and what we were trying to achieve. The next engagement then with Invest Northern Ireland, this came at a time whenever we became what we call a client, and we were appointed a client executive, a guy called Stephen O'Neill, back around this time, just after around mid-2018. And we embarked upon this Design Active program. And really what this was for us was around the Kairos brand, which wasn't just to be getting a fancy logo. It was more around trying to talk about what Kairos was going to do, who the audience was that we were going to be engaging with. But we were able to work again with another local company, Pale Blue Dot, here in Belfast, through the support of Invest Northern Ireland and a mentor, to be able to start to really dig into what Kairos was about, the brand presence that we wanted to be able to deliver on as well. Following that then, and starting to get a bit of traction and starting to really believe in what we were doing, we embarked upon an investment round. So really, very little money to go and build what we needed to build. So we had to get money from elsewhere, and in return for that, give away some of the company. And again, Techstart, who we started to build up a good relationship with, people like Jamie there and Audrey Osborne, for example, built up a good relationship. So they, by this stage, knew a good bit of what we were about, the good and the bad. And we were able to chat to them about what our ambitions were around investment. And they came in and they led that investment round by putting a sizable amount of money. And that allowed us then to raise investment pretty quickly, actually. That all kicked off around October. And around the same time, we got our first customer. So Ulster Rugby, you'd be forgiven for thinking that we were chatting to Ulster Rugby from the outset around this, but Ulster Rugby was a little bit too close to home for Andrew. So we didn't really have much meaningful discussion with Ulster, especially at a sort of a managerial level, for want of a better phrase, because we wanted to prove out what we had before we went to his own club. But they then got in touch with us, having heard what we were up to. And that MVP that we had and the Techstart funding as well, the extra Techstart funding, allowed us then to go and put in a pretty basic, pretty ugly to be fair, version of Kairos into Ulster Rugby, but very quickly. And from then, they've been using it ever since and been able to get good value. Technical development then, anybody who knows this program, it's called the Technical Development Initiative, or TDI as we refer to it. So for us, this was a mechanism within Invest Northern Ireland whereby Invest Northern Ireland would help fund some of the cost required to go and build out software. So at this point in time, we're still trying to get investment landing. We're still trying to make that investment work by regards product development and access to market and everything else. And this technical development initiative was hugely important for us because we didn't have an in-house technical team, engineers at this stage. We were very reliant on Dawson Andrews with a very, very tight budget. So the technical development initiative for us allowed us to sort of escalate product development quite quickly. We were able to use that funding then to be able to offset a lot of those costs, which meant that we could commit more capital and go faster at our product development. In December then, we made our first hire. So a big gap for Andrew and myself was that people will think, that I'm a tech guy because of the digital DNA connection, but the best way to describe me is the guy that knows the tech guys, if that makes sense. So for us, a big gap that we had was engineering, and we brought in a VP of engineering. The warts and all that John referred to was, unfortunately, that relationship didn't work out, and it was a massive learning curve. After 5 months of time and effort and a bit of money was burnt on that, but that was our first hire at that point in time. Jumping then into 2019, we closed out investment. So initially we had hoped to try and raise 400,000 of investment back then to get the ball rolling. And for different reasons, we were able to do that a little bit quicker, and we were able to get that amount to 700,000. So we had a decent bit of change to play with, more than what we had planned to. And for us, 2019 then became about escalating the product. We kicked off another program with Invest NI called Innovative Start. So this was a milestone-based program where Invest NI would release amounts of money based on us being able to demonstrate traction. So things like critical hires, things like critical customers, for example, even the investment piece as well formed part of that as well. But that was another mechanism by which allowed us to really go at pace, which is critically important for a software company like ours. We also availed of January other funding around export assistance. So that allowed us then to go and have conversations in other countries. I think that trip was one to New York, and that was around chatting to a number of sort of high profile sports people over there, and that allowed us to do that. And we were able to avail of export assistance a number of times since that. Really importantly, we were accepted onto an Ignite Accelerator. You might have seen a logo there on one of Jeremy's slides. The Ignite Accelerator is run out of Ormo Baths, an Invest NI funded program delivered by some really, really good people. And that was a program where it took us, a very ignorant and wet behind the ears startup who knew we were onto something, but had very little idea about how to go about building out the product effectively and efficiently, bearing in mind that we were working out that we made the wrong decision from an engineering perspective, trying to work out how do we make sure that we can develop this product at pace to the way that our market wants. The program also helped us understand how we should access the market and understand our market and how we should go about that. Parts of that was a convertible loan note as well, which meant that we were able to receive a small amount of money as well to help us again just put more capital into the product development, which was the major priority at this point in time. March was then our second hire. Thankfully, this guy is still with us today. We learned our lessons from the first one, and Maddie's still with us today. And again, that was another engineering type role. May 2019 was important for us. We had got an introduction to Manchester United, wrangled our way into their training ground in a place called Carrington, just outside Manchester. And we started at this point to build up a relationship as well with Alan Clark and Sean O'Connor, Paul McKernan at Stat Sports, based just down in Newry. And the way Stat Sports probably would have looked at us as being like the little brother who needed a little bit of help and a little bit of support and a bit of a foothold. So that the conversation that day sparked an opportunity for us around how we as a communications company for elite sports teams could partner with the Stat Sports and being able to take the very rich data the Stat Sports collect, and then how Kairos could be the mechanism by which that data is then presented directly to the individual player. And a guy that we spoke to that day, a very senior guy in the first team, loved the concept of that. It was one of those opportune moments where we just threw it out, sitting around a canteen table in Carrington as an option, and the guy said, like, yeah, why don't we do a pilot? And that's what we've been working on that in the background, and that opened up a whole conversation with Manchester United for us, which hopefully may result in something bigger down the line. In June, then we took that Design Active program that I mentioned previously, and we took on to the next strand of that. So I think that's where Invest NI for me are very good, in that it's not just about creating one program which ends and then that's you. There's a lot of programs which will take you on to the next chapter, so you can progress a little bit further, having achieved results and success with the initial phase of that. And Design Forward was the program, and from that we went and got a video created, a promotional video created, which really tried to explain the value proposition of Kairos and something that we could use to be able to engage the market. September the 2nd then became our second customer. That was actually Down GAA, all of which are still customers today. And that was they've been on board ever since. A guy called Paddy Talley, Down manager, very local to us, but again, give us an insight into the opportunity that exists within GAA sport, both in Ireland and further afield. Moving then into June, so this is just over a year ago. Just less than a year ago. The first half of 2020 for us was just deep into product development, speaking loads to the market, and getting really good feedback. We were out at a conference in Baltimore, not a city that would recommend you go for your holidays, but useful for us in terms of being able to speak with a lot of coaches and heads of performance, etc. And around that time, we realized that Kairos was in good shape, but we spent the first 6 months really rattling hard at it and getting it into a good place. And bear in mind the COVID bit around these sort of Q1, Q2 part of last year as well. And on one hand, that was a massive blow to us because lots of budget was then pulled back because of gate receipts in clubs and stadiums. But on the other hand, a lot of our personas, heads of performance, head medics, coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, for example, they were all furloughed and they were all at home and they were all bored and they were all willing to jump onto a Zoom call. We were able to kickstart a lot of relationships through that as well. The Growth Accelerator program around June last year came about whenever we went to invest in Northern Ireland and we were chatting about what our next big challenges were. And one of them for us was about being able to get our message out to the market, and how Andrew, myself and the current team didn't have the capacity or the capability, I guess, to be able to put messaging together and to communicate that across the relevant channels to be able to hit an arguably very hard to reach persona within elite sport. So we went out and we brought in through the Growth Accelerator program, which helped fund a marketing consultant that came in for 6 months and added massive value to us in terms of really being able to refine our message and our go-to-market strategy. Then shortly after that, we embarked, around that same time actually, but we got it signed off in September, was R&D support. So a big innovative part of what we want to do going forward is that integration play with other third parties such as StatSports. We can pull all that information into Kairos and present it to the player in a really meaningful, simplistic manner. And this R&D support is for that project. So there's just under $500,000 spend project, and then Invest NI are helping us to fund and deliver that, a project that we wouldn't have been able to do without the support of Invest Northern Ireland. We then embarked upon another investment round just last October. So again, as a startup, you have very little revenue coming in. Sometimes, if any, you're looking at your bank account on a week-to-week basis and just seeing it go further and further and further down to zero. You start to get quite nervous around that. And startups like us, we rely heavily on investment. So we embarked upon a new investment round, and we set out there to raise 500,000. Very, very nervous about COVID, the impact that was having on angel investors who would have arguably had a lot more disposable income prior to the pandemic. But we set out looking to try and raise 400,000 at that point in time in October, and again chatting to current our previous shareholders, etc., as well, to see how much traction we could get. And for us, that investment round was all about driving growth in the market. That was going to be focused on access to market, sales, resource, etc. as well. November, importantly, Scotland qualified for the Euros. You probably wonder why that's there. But by this stage, we had onboarded Scotland international men's team as a customer. And we brought them on board last, probably September, October time. A guy, Graham Jones, head of performance, brought it in. And there was 3 campaigns prior to them qualifying for the Euros. So obviously, because Kairos was being used for those 3 campaigns, we take full credit for their qualification. But that was massive for Scotland, and it was the first time, I think, maybe 20 years that they had qualified for a major tournament. So for us, it was just a really nice story, and I'm sure many people on the Zoom call will understand the value of customers, current customers, being able to tell the story of the success. So for us, that's been a major part of what we've been able to do now over this past 6 months through Graham Jones, who's been a real supporter to us, being able to tell that story. And even little things like you're chatting to a Premier League football team and you can say to someone, why don't you ring, here's Graham Jones's mobile number, why don't you ring him and ask him what he thinks. So that was a massive moment for us, and clearly obviously for Scotland as well. Yes, so in November then, as I said, we're looking to bring in investment. For us, we had earmarked bringing in 1 sales person to try and help us massively, help us drive growth. 2021 for us was all going to be about revenue, all going to be about customers. It just has to be. And then we went and again, with the relationship that we have with the client executive, we were able they were able to understand us and what it was we were trying to do as a business in 2021. And then they were able to look on our behalf at the mechanisms available within Invest Northern Ireland, and to just ask simple questions like, well, what would happen if you were able to bring on more sales resource, etc. And we were able to identify that with a bit of support, we could actually put more money into sales, and we went out and hired 2 sales executives off the back of that. And what that funding allowed us to do was not only hire the second person, but also put a bit more money behind those sales. So instead of hiring someone who was maybe intermediate experience, for want of a better phrase, we were able to bring in 2 seasoned sales guys, if you like, that have got experience selling to elite sports teams. So again, massive for us in terms of being able to escalate and speed up what we were about. In November, we've been chatting prior to this, probably from about October to be fair, but we were made aware of the COVID Equity Investment Fund, which was a way, and Jeremy can probably describe this and a lot better. It was a way of Invest Northern Ireland being able to plug any gaps of investment. So we had set out to raise £400. So the COVID Equity Investment Fund would be there should we exhaust all other forms of government funding, and should we have a gap with our 400 grand target. So we spoke to them at length. So that was probably one of the most, I would use the word brutal, and only insofar as the time and effort that we put into that. The nervousness that we had, as we just didn't know how much money we were going to be able to raise, and we had to keep that as an option for us, even though we were having lots of good discussions. But it was around November, December time, it was brutal in terms of the amount of time and effort that it took us, just in terms of, you know, being able to put the information into Invest Northern Ireland, all being requested for the right reasons. But that was a tough time in terms of what else we could have been doing with that time. But I thought it was important to put it in there because it's easy me talking about all the good things that we've done as well. In January, then we closed out investments. So we had hit that target we had set that target of 400 grand. And we had also, wanted to keep the likes of the COVID Equity Investment Fund as an option for us. But we closed out investment actually at just over 700 grand, which has since increased to over 800,000, which is massive for us now in terms of really starting to escalate growth this year. And then finally, in terms of today, just a very quick snapshot. You know, it's been a hard-out slog through all those years. It was quite an interesting exercise, you know, looking at those 4 years. But currently we've got 16 clubs across UK, Ireland and US using Kairos. We have a couple of big brands to announce over the next few months, and we've got 11 staff, all working remotely at the moment. That just gives you a bit of an overview with what we've been up to and how that intertwines with Invest Northern Ireland. I'm hoping it's useful. I'm talking a lot there, just another couple of minutes. And I know you guys are probably wanting to get back off your lunch break and back to work. I'm talking a lot there about grants and about funding. It is worth mentioning a little bit around the other support that we got. Our first real engagement with Invest NI came through Stephen O'Neill, and then subsequently Ronan Trainer, who were our client executives. And they got to know Kairos intimately. So instead of me going to Invest Northern Ireland with a begging bowl and asking, here, listen, can I get some money for this and can I get some money for that? This was a different relationship where these guys wanted to know about Kairos. What was our strengths, our weaknesses? What was it we were looking to do? What was our ambitions? And it was really a case of how they could help. So I never really had to go to Invest Northern Ireland and say, listen, I need money for this. It was more a case of me sharing with them at different stages in our journey and throughout what we were up to and what were our challenges and opportunities. And they were the guys that came to us with options, if you like, as to what we could or couldn't do. Also, other areas of support was around technical advice in there as well. People like Gary Smiley from a technical perspective, Sherry Gardner as well. You were just keeping us right, even for Andrew and myself, who weren't technology minded, keeping us right in terms of what it was we were trying to do. And then some sort of, other softer benefits as well. And a random one, which might be of interest, is that we've got Lydia Stevenson, who works in the PR department, that got in touch with us wanting to do a story about Kairos. We reluctantly did that because we just didn't see what the value would be, ignorantly. And what then happened off the back of that, an expat from here, from Northern Ireland, who now works at a big technology firm in Phoenix, Arizona, saw the LinkedIn post that Invest NI put out, got in touch and invested $250,000 in the most recent round. That wouldn't have happened if Invest NI hadn't put out that press release. So for us, I'll finish up. There's a lot of good stuff in there. We've had a very good relationship with Invest NI. I know that other companies will struggle at times. In my previous company, I struggled. And I think where we were able to turn this around this time was, instead of viewing Invest Northern Ireland as being this government body that had a right or had an obligation to give us money, we embraced it through making lots of mistakes as a partnership and working together with the common goal of being able to grow our business. And from that, I think that helped us get a lot more from that relationship. So thank you. Went a bit over there, so apologies, John, and I'm sure a few people have dropped off, but hopefully that was helpful.
No, thanks loads for that, Gareth. And folks, conscious we are running over by a couple of minutes, but I think very worthwhile. And I'm going to stay on just for another 5 to 10 minutes max, just to cover off some of the questions, because we have been getting a lot of questions in. But Gareth, just to comment on your presentation, as I say, thanks loads for that. Really good words and all story in terms of a brutal process, but also I counted through that roadmap. There was 15 little stars there as you went along, where Invest NI had, as you said, some kind of direct or indirect support. And I have to say, I love a local new startup business story. And closing out those funding rounds and having those clubs on your book isn't bad for a wee idea you were twiddling away at, as you put it. So listen, well done on that. Folks, we have a few questions in here. The first one I want to cover off in terms of the slides and the recording of the event. That will be available afterwards. So all attendees will be emailed with a copy of the slides and a link to the recording. So look, you will get that again. There's a couple of specific ones that I just wanted, I'm sorry, we're going to just dive straight in here, Jeremy. A couple of specific ones that I wanted to pick up with you that have been submitted in. So one question in here saying that their view is that Northern Ireland businesses are at a disadvantage to some on GB mainland due to the lack of availability of capital grants for larger businesses specifically. And just asking, is there a prospect of capital grants for larger businesses becoming available in Northern Ireland? Any comments?
So we're governed by whatever the state aid legislation is on that, John. I'd be curious to know, like, if there are examples of capital grants on the mainland being offered. I'd be curious to know what they are, because I'm certainly not familiar with them. But so, for example, if it's a follow-on expansion from an existing business, whether it's locally owned or internationally owned, if it's a large company, then up until now we have not been able to support that. Now, with the change, with the UK coming out of the EU, those are things that we are looking at. So it's dependent on what the UK decide, and then it's also dependent on budget availability as well. One of the constraints that we have had is the Department of Finance and Department of Economy limited us on what's called a cost per job derogation. So we sometimes find that challenging, that if there aren't any jobs associated with an expansion, then that can sometimes be a challenge. But the restrictions are mainly EU government. That's what's preventing us from doing that.
Super, thank you for that, Jeremy. Gareth, I'm going to come to you for a question. You sort of chatted through there the interactions with Invest NI, and just conscious people will be on this call to try and maximise the support that they can potentially get. So what would you recommend to do to get the most out of your relationship with Invest NI?
I think it's simple, because it comes down to the relationship, you know. So like, I don't want to view Invest NI as a client as such, but if we were working with a Manchester United and there was a key point of contact in there, then we want to really build that relationship really strong. We want to share with that contact in the club, you know, what our journey is, what we're up to, how they're going to benefit. And I think for us, as treating your client, just building a rapport and a relationship with your client executive, I think that's absolutely critical to do that, and to let them make sure that they're nearly part of the business and what you're up to. We find huge value in that, and as I say that now, having made the mistake of not doing that in a previous venture. So that's, I suppose, the learning that I was able to get.
Yeah, thanks, Gareth. Thanks. Then, Jeremy, coming back to you, another question here, just asking around, sometimes there's a perception that Invest NI is seen by some as focusing more on international companies. Is that something you would agree with or contest, or any comments?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and I think probably where that perception comes from is what the media pick up on are the larger FDI projects, and that's what tends to get reported, and then people think that that's all we care about. The reality, John, on that is 93% of our offers go to locally owned businesses. So 93%, 90% of our offers go to SMEs. Now there is a little bit, when you look at the split of assistance that we offer, it's probably 60% locally owned, 40% to international, because those companies that we're offering are bigger. But for the 60% of that we offer to locally against 40% for internationally. The total investment lever is about 50-50 international against local. So the level of resource allocated to the local is far greater in reality than it is to international.
Thank you. And I'm going to stick with you, Jeremy, as well.
Sorry, I just want to add actually on that point, because the other perception is a lot of it's Belfast based. So 75% of our support is outside of Belfast.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm going to stick with you for another one, Jeremy, and I'm conscious that you won't be on top of the minutiae of the detail of all the various schemes. So this may be an unfair question. If it is, you're allowed to pass or phone a friend. And I'm going to read it out because I'm not familiar with all the schemes. When do Invest NI anticipate that the payments will be made to clients under LCDSS?
Okay, that's the Limited Company Director Support Scheme. There was a problem with that in how HMRC were defining it. Was it an individual scheme or was it a company scheme? So that was a discussion that was going on between the Department for Economy and HMRC. That has now been resolved. So it has been designated as a company scheme. So the payments will be made to the companies. Those payments have just commenced. So that they have started, and it's just an issue of trying to work through the backlog that exists there. So if I was to look at that slide that I put up, 136 have been paid already, which is about 12 grand's worth, but it's only about 2% of the total. So those payments will be coming out hopefully over the next few weeks. Okay,
good, thank you. Hopefully that's good news for whoever posed that question. Thank you for that, Jeremy. And the last question I have for you, Jeremy, here is just, Gareth, I've one here for you, but Jeremy, any final comments or takeaways for today's audience? Look, the topic is obviously engaging with Invest NI, maximising the support available there. Just look, have you sort of a final comment or final takeaway for the audience?
Yeah, John, I think if there was one, it's really to reinforce what Gareth has said. If you look at my presentation, it highlights how complex an organisation Invest NI is and the full range of programmes that there are. We don't expect businesses in Northern Ireland to understand all of the programmes. What I expect of the team, the client executives and the client managers, the relationship managers, what we want to happen, as I said during the presentation, Invest NI doesn't grow the economy, it's the businesses that grow. We want those businesses to see us as a resource to help them grow so the economy grows overall. So as Gareth pointed out, the role of the client executive is to understand the issues that the businesses are facing, not for the businesses to understand every single programme that Invest NI offers. So if the client executive or client manager can understand the issues that the businesses face and then come back to the sort of big toolbox that I've just described, and it's up to them to say, look, we can help you with this or that in the way that Gareth's described it, that Kairos has been helped, then that's the way it should work. So it is complicated, I know that, and we're not expecting everybody to understand all of the programs, but it's for the client executive and build that relationship. We want to have a relationship where we're seen as the trusted business partner and we help the company grow. And also just to reinforce, it's not just about the money. A lot of the time, the advisory support can actually be a lot more valuable than just the cash.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that clearly came across in Gareth's presentation as well. I really like the idea that, you know, a bit of support and advice led to an expat in Arizona investing 250 grand into the business. So yeah, there's clearly other benefits there. Gareth, just coming to you, I have two questions that I want to put to you. And don't worry, Jeremy's audio is now off, so you can answer this very openly. Gareth, what are the biggest problems you face when it comes to working with Invest NI?
I think it's a lot of it is the sheer amount of time and effort that's required sometimes. You know, I give one example there of the COVID equity fund, which we didn't, thankfully, it wasn't required in the end, but there's so much time and effort sometimes that is required. That's changed massively, even in those years, that timeline that you've seen, like, you know, forms are being refined. You've now got an online portal that you can use, which makes things an awful lot more simpler. So there definitely is a lot of progress that's been made. And I suppose you have to get your head around as well that you know, there's a level of bureaucracy there to protect the spend of public money. having worked in City Hall Belfast for the guts of 10 years, it helps maybe that I get that a little bit. And I understand that people just can't go and write you a check because you've got a good idea or because you think this is going to be something which is worth doing. So I think that the time and effort that is required, if you can try and get by that, and I've tried everything in terms of, do you contract someone in to write an application because they might know a bit more, you get a bit of help here, etc. It's the time, I think, but again, if you look back at the support, as you've just seen, that we've been given and the time that's been put in, it's well worth it. But that would be the biggest issue, I would say.
Super, thanks, Gareth. I'm just conscious of time. We'll have a couple of questions which we won't have time to answer, folks. So look, we will maybe follow up directly on those. And if you do have questions, hopefully I speak on behalf of Jeremy and Gareth. Okay, they're happy to take questions maybe after this. So look, you can filter them through to us and we can close that off. But look, stepping away from the Invest NI topic, Gareth, I'm excited by the Kairos story over the course of the last few years and excited to know what's to come. So look, can you give us a flavour of what's next for Kairos?
Yeah, who knows, right? But it has to be about sales for us. That's where we are at this point in time. So I think for us, it's just trying to be very focused on what we do, but at the same time, being able to take advantage of the opportunities. And what I mean by that is, we're starting to get a bit of traction now in the US. We've just signed up our first professional soccer team in the US. And we signed up a team in Canada as well. And we just got to be very careful about the resource that we have. A good analogy to describe it is Jim Collins talks about bullets and cannonballs. And we've sent a lot of bullets across the Atlantic, as bad as that sounds, to try and see what's over there and how do we de-risk the resource that we spend. But now that a few of those bullets are landing, we're now looking at a few cannonballs to try and push on really where we've seen a bit of success. So for us, it has to be about sales. And that's the pressure that is on a startup, on every company, if you like, that we need to turn this idea that we have, which we're starting to do, thankfully, into sales and into bottom line. That's what we're focused on now. Super,
brilliant. Well, listen, I think I speak on behalf of all attendees. We wish you all the very best in that, and we look forward to watching the story continue. So look, folks, I'm conscious on my computer the time is 2:15, so I'm going to wrap things up and bring the session to a close. Can I, on behalf of all the attendees, thank Jeremy and Gareth for a really useful and insightful session. With so many of the initiatives and support schemes, it's hard to keep on top of them all. So I think it's been really good to get an updated overview and pointers on where we can find out more information, and also to hear Gareth's story and experience. So gents, sincere thanks to you both for that. On behalf of the Society, can I also thank all the attendees for joining and for your participation. Please do watch out for future details of future events, which will be published soon, and hope you all have a good afternoon. Thank you.